We had a lot of experts on to provide various money lessons, but what lessons can we gain from the most known book in the world? To help discuss what the Bible teaches us about money, I brought on Bob Lotich from Seedtime. Even if you're not Christian, this episode provides a lot of solid advice about how to handle your money and use that money to help others. Welcome to the MapleMoney Show, the podcast that helps Canadians improve their personal finances to create lasting financial freedom. Today's show is brought to you by our sponsors at Borrowell, Canada's leading credit education company. My wife and I both signed up to get our free credit scores and credit reports, and we receive an update each month via email. I love getting the emails each month from the Borrowell team, letting me know if my score has improved or not. Get your free credit score at MapleMoney.com/Borrowell. That's MapleMoney.com/BORROWELL. Now here's Bob Lotich. Hi, Bob. Welcome to the Maple Money Show.
Hey, Tom. Thank you for having me, brother.
Thanks for being on. So I wanted to talk with you today about sort of what we can learn from the Bible towards our personal finances. And it's not just for Christians. Obviously, Christians will get a lot more out of this. But I think there's a lot of helpful information, even if you're into other religions or you just believe in money mindset or anything like that. Just how to be a better person, how to use your money to do better things. I think we can learn a lot from here.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So I think one of the big ones I've always found interesting out of the Bible, and I believe you kind of have a different idea on this, is for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It's one that gets used a lot just in regular circles. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, normally the misquoting is that money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
And technically, like you just said there, it's actually the love of money that's the root of all evil. And I think we all know that. Like, I think we look at some of the stereotypical kind of executives on Wall Street, and we'll look at Enron, and we'll look at situations like that where we see people who maybe are just really lustful for being rich, and just really, really are in love with money, and it just seems to lead down a really bad path. But one of the interesting things I think is that a lot of us who maybe aren't that wealthy or affluent just kind of think that we're like off the hook. But I mean, realistically, you can love money whether you have a lot of money or you have no money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's something that we all should kind of think about and evaluate, and just continue to check ourselves and make sure that we're not kind of going down that path.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've often heard called evil is something like credit cards, like
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of reminds me of what you just said, because it just depends on what you're doing with it. It's not using a credit card that's wrong, right?
Yeah. I mean, back to the previous point. Yeah, money itself is not evil. It's loving money, like according to that verse, and the same with the credit card. I don't think it's a good idea to carry balance and to be paying 15-20% interest rates on your credit cards. But if you're using it like a charge card and getting the rewards from it, I see a lot of benefit to be gained there personally. So.
Mm-hmm. What can the Bible show us about debt itself? Like maybe you have used your credit card incorrectly, and now you've got this extra debt. What can we learn from the Bible there?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Bible, it just never really has anything really good to say about debt. It doesn't say that's a sin. It doesn't say anything like that. But it's just never really talked about in terms of, just go get a whole bunch of debt because you'll be able to do really cool stuff. In which, I think we all also kind of know. But in my case, when we got married, we sought to pay off all of our debt. And I wanted to get out of debt. So we had a bunch of student loans and car loans and credit cards and all this different debt. And so we just kind of worked towards paying it off. And by 2012, we ended up having all of our debt paid off. 2012 was when we actually paid off our mortgage. We were 100% debt free. And I'm like, this is amazing. And it felt so great. It felt like we were just floating. It felt like, the famous Bible verse is that the borrower is slave to the lender. And That's in Proverbs somewhere if you want to look it up. But and and I think any of us who have had like a whole lot of debt kind of can relate to that bondage, and kind of, especially if you have debt collectors calling, like you kind of feel like you're a slave a little bit to that debt. And so anyway, after we had paid off our mortgage, like I felt so free, and I felt like just the opposite. Like this entire weight had been lifted off of me, and I felt like I'm floating, and it felt great. And then we moved 3 years later. So we had 3 years of being 100% debt free, moved to another city with a higher cost of living. And we chose to buy a house and take out a mortgage. And immediately I could feel that burden back.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any other debt, and it's just a mortgage payment. It's not like it's that big of a deal, but within months, I'm like, we got to get this thing paid off, and I am never going into debt again. Like that feeling of not having any debt and not having to owe anyone, like, is just so good. I never want to come back to this place. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things where I feel like the Bible just kind of encourages us to kind of seek out a path of eliminating debt, because debt was a very regular occurrence for a lot of people back then. And it's used very differently then, but it was a thing that was there. And anyway, and so all that to say, like, yeah, I think there's an encouragement for us to stay out of debt. And personally, I've seen a lot of benefit from it, and that's how I want to live my life,
Well, and that verse being so old, but it's probably more relevant now than it ever has been.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the last 50 years or so, with the rise and prevalence of credit cards and how insane so many of us have become with using them for everything, absolutely, so much relevancy.
I've said on the show before, I never had a huge debt issue. I had some debt, and I certainly paid it off. But my issue was buying a lot of things I didn't need, especially in college, and it felt a bit like hoarding, and some of the stuff I'm still trying to get rid of 20 years later, and it sits in boxes. Does the Bible say anything about hoarding?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think. I mean, I feel like I have a Bible quiz going on right now. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a handful of verses that I can kind of, tie to that idea a little bit. I've never, thought of it specifically in terms of hoarding, but, I think for Christians and believers, like anything that comes between us and God is a problem. And I think that is probably the root of hoarding in a lot of ways. And a lot of times it's maybe putting your trust in something else, maybe being fearful of running out, and therefore I have to save so much. And, and all that just, I think fundamentally just kind of works against faith to some extent. And, so those are my thoughts. Like, what first comes to mind when you ask that.
Yeah. And hoarding's not too far off from greed. And I know there's a lot more. One of the lines that I grabbed was, he who is greedy for gain troubles his own house. Just the idea that, similar to what you just said about hoarding is what reminded me of it. It was just how it kind of gets in the way and kind of brings you down a little.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, the next thing I wanted to cover was the saving side of how another line I had grabbed was the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. It seems like another line where that can apply to personal finance, sort of as I take it, the way I see it is sort of the benefits of sort of financial planning and budgeting.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, is there anything on that you can kind of elaborate on?
Yeah. You see planning all throughout the Bible. I mean, you can go way back in the Old Testament. You can see Noah, like think about Noah, he gets his heads up from God to build this ark because there's just be this crazy big flood. And, and regardless of whether you believe the story is actually true, there's a lesson to be taken there. Mm-hmm. And the same with Joseph in Egypt, and for those who might not be familiar, but basically he rose up through the ranks, through the prison, and became Pharaoh's right-hand man. And and basically he helped Egypt prepare for a 7-year famine by saving for 7 years. And anyway, so yeah, and you see that all throughout the book of Proverbs. There's just a lot of talk about the wisdom of saving and preparing for the future. So,
hmm Now, all of this sort of helps us improve our personal finances, but at some point it comes time to give back. And I know there's
yeah,
a lot in the Bible about giving. Can you kind of go into that?
yeah, yeah. I mean, anything specific?
Well, so sort of the joy of giving. I
Yeah,
know with my business, we give 5% back to financial literacy causes,
yeah,
and yes, it feels good, and we're helping out for a certain cause. And I know there's a lot in the Bible sort of
yeah.
about that joy of giving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think one of the most interesting things is that in red letters, and what that means for anybody who had an older Bible is like in the older Bibles they would put Jesus' words in red letters in there, and Jesus himself. So in red letters, he said that it's more blessed to give than to receive, and I think it's real easy just to kind of take that as, oh, it's just something Jesus said, whatever, and then blow it off, but. If you actually think about what that means, like, because it doesn't really make sense, at least for me. The first time I hear that, it's like, really? I mean, would I rather give $10,000 or get $10,000? And I think if you just see things kind of from a short-sighted perspective, it's really easy to just assume that getting something is better, and that I am more blessed, more. I'm enjoying my life more because I got $10,000 than if I gave away $10,000.
Mhm.
But I think it's actually just a short-sighted perspective. If you actually see things with a longer-term horizon, and you actually see them the way they really are, then I think that's when you truly begin to understand that it actually is better. Like if you see your life as an entire trying to figure out the best way to describe this. So basically, I mean, see your life from a 10,000 foot perspective instead of just this moment, this week, this year, even. And if you're 80 years old and you're looking back on your life, I think that's when you can actually see a little bit more of that. It's a little bit clearer to see and to understand, I think. But yeah, so that's one thing that's just always kind of been fascinating to me. And it's, and something else I think is really crazy is that, the Bible says that, as we give, we will have more, which is completely counterintuitive because it's the same way. It's like, I just gave away $10,000, and you're saying that I'm going to have more. But yeah, there's like tons of verses that promise us that as we give, we're going to be given back to. And, in my website, it's called Seedtime, and it's based off of a Bible verse in Genesis where it says there will always be seed time and harvest. And this whole idea of sowing and reaping is a biblical thing. And, and the key to reaping more is sowing more, so, so God really does have this kind of seed time principle in effect with our giving, but also in all kinds of other areas of life as well. So yeah, it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, the point you brought up about being 80 years old kind of makes me think, like, do you just want to have a big bank account, or do you want to sort of have this legacy where maybe you've helped people in various ways? It could be giving money, it could also be volunteering and everything too. But
yeah, and I think when those of us, as we mature, like I'm 37 right now, and I feel like I've had some level of maturity, but I still have ways to go, but I'm out of my teenage years, so I've made some progress there. But I think as you mature and you have moments where you are able to have a positive impact on someone's life, and you sense that joy from doing that, yeah, I think that's kind of where that's headed, and when you can, continue to start to see some of the fruit of that, and really feel like, wow, okay, this actually is really fun. Like when I can use something I have to really improve this person's life, or even save this person's life, that's when I think it gets really fun.
Yeah, for sure. I've felt the same, like I said, with giving personally, but also through the business. Like when you're able to do something that, uh, in the case of my business, sometimes it's as simple as filling the needs of the food bank.
Yeah.
I'll go to the store, purchase certain the items they truly listed on their website that they needed, and bring that in, and you're helping someone out,
Yeah.
and yeah, it feels great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, for those that are Christians, what about tithing? Uh, I've heard 10%. I know I don't do that personally. I'll admit that. um, what's sort of the rules there?
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of debate. There's a lot of debate about tithing. It's probably the most controversial topic I've ever written about. So yeah, I'm sure non-Christians just think it's insane, but even among Christians, it's a very yeah, it's just a very heavily debated topic. But where I land on the whole thing, it's like there's a verse in Malachi. It's Malachi 3:10, and it says, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may meat in my house." And basically, if you do this, I'm going to open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that you can't contain. So personally, in my life, like I have seen that, I have experienced that. Like my wife and we started tithing. I mean, I think I started tithing like a year or two before I got married, and she had tithes before that. So we came together and we just continued tithing, uh, and we actually worked to go beyond our tithe, and we would just continue to stretch our giving higher and higher and higher. And in our experience, like I just feel like we have experienced that where the windows of heaven have been opened, and we've just had a abundance of blessing pour out on us that it feels like we can't contain. So like I feel like we have lived that verse personally. And so, yeah, so I'm a huge proponent for it. Now, I'm not an advocate of it being a very legalistic, law-bound thing where it's like, you become a Christian, you have to do this. Or, I mean, I definitely don't think it's a sin. It's absolutely not something that keeps you from going to heaven. Like, it has nothing to do with that. But I view it more as it's an opportunity for us to do something again that is completely counterintuitive and makes no sense in the natural, but to trust God in this area and see what he does. And, in our experience, like, yeah, my jaw has dropped with what has happened as we continue to kind of test him in that area. And I should add that that's the other part of that verse. That's the one part in the Bible where it says that we can test God is in this area of giving. And so, anyway, so yeah, that's been our experience, and that's what I talk about because that's what I know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
and even if someone's not Christian, going back to the idea of charity, just if you could afford to make 10%, that could make a huge difference around your local city or your country, anything.
Yeah.
Or if you want to take it as personal finance, we could also say that it still kind of shows the importance of maybe saving 10% towards your retirement. Like there's still this idea that giving that now sort of gives you a benefit in the future.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's switch this around a little. I just wanted to cover a bit of sort of how this can affect business. One of the things I see a lot of what I know of the Bible is a lot about ethics. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you can think of? One of the lines I grabbed was dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. And it seems sort of it could really apply to business ethics and how you sort of just run your business.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think there's just a lot about I feel like how we run our business is how we run our lives and how we make decisions. And it's like, and I didn't realize this before I was a business owner, and you might not have either, but basically a business is an extension of you, and your own honesty, your own kind of approach to how you treat people, that just funnels down and trickles down throughout your business. And even if you have employees, like it all just kind of comes from the top. And I didn't realize that as much before, I kind of started my first business, but knowing that, like I don't really separate one from the other anymore. It's like, because I can't expect to have a business that that is basically run with whatever sound ethical processes or approaches to things. I can't really expect that if I'm not doing that in my own life,
Mm-hmm.
and so anyway, so yeah, I just a lot of the basic kind of principles of how to walk in love with one another, and how to treat each other, and the golden rule, and like all these things, like just make for a good business. Like if that's your goal, and which I think it should be, because I think those are the most the businesses that have longevity, because you can build a business in the short term and screw people over and try to scam people, and you can probably make a lot of money in a short time, but you're not going to last. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be around in 10 years doing that. Like, and so to me, it just makes a lot more sense to do things the right way and to think long term with it all. And and that's very much a biblical approach.
Mm-hmm. And I think more than ever nowadays, people are looking for those ethical businesses. They want to
Yeah.
feel aligned with sort of the purpose of that business.
Yeah, the social entrepreneurship and all that stuff. Just really where, and it's great that so many businesses now are almost built on the idea of giving back, or on built. It's almost like people have decided, or some entrepreneurs have figured out that we don't need to start a not-for-profit to help this particular cause. We can build a business and actually probably have more impact. And I'm thinking about Tom's Shoes and some of those big ones that have made a big impact. Yeah, I'm glad that they did it the way they did.
Yeah. The final thing I was thinking of for business was the idea of rest. I've said on the show before, I've worked a lot. Like I have my
Yeah.
day job, and then I spend time with my family, and I work in the evening and on weekends. And I know the Bible talks a lot about the importance of rest, specifically the seventh day. But even beyond that, I know you also are a big fan of sabbaticals as well.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain what that is and how that helps?
Yeah. So let's see. I can talk for a long time about this, so I'll try to keep it brief. But yeah, I never really understood the Sabbath thing really, I feel like probably until the last few years. And I just always viewed it as this outdated religious obligation to not work on Sunday. And it didn't really make sense to me, and I probably ignored it most times. And I don't know. The last couple of years, I've read a couple books about it, and I feel like I've just kind of grown a little bit in this area, and I'm seeing it completely different now. And so I see it as an opportunity to have faith. So for one, like now I'm really good about not working on Sunday. Like I dedicate that day to play, basically. And I might have the best opportunity in the world come up on a Sunday for me. Maybe it's New York Times pitches me, say, "Hey, I want to get a quote for an article I'm, putting out tomorrow." And God help me, if that happens, I'm going to turn it down, and I'm going to say, "I'm sorry, it's Sabbath." And well, honestly, I'm not checking my email anyway, so I wouldn't even know about it. But the reason that I would do that, and that I have done that really the last couple of years, is because it's an opportunity for me to stand in my faith, with God, and to basically say, "God, here's the deal. You told me to do this. And if you told me to do this, I trust that it's going to work out better for me if I do this than if I don't. So even though it looks like I might be, getting quoted in the New York Times, I'm just going to trust that you have something better in store as a result of that." So that has been kind of my approach and how I've changed with it. Now, selfishly, what I've discovered, and like you said about the sabbatical things, like I've taken a 1-month sabbatical for the last 6 years, I believe. And I don't know that I've ever done anything better for my business than taking that long a time off. In just not working, not touching email, like doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It is every single time by week 2 or 3, I am like chomping at the bit with so many ideas. I am so rested and refreshed. I am so excited to get back to work. I am so just absolutely fired up to do, basically to run my business and to do what, I'm supposed to be doing. So like selfishly, like that's the main reason I keep doing it, because it's just been so beneficial for my business, and it's really hard to do, and it's scary to kind of take that much time off. But, I'll just tell you from experience, it's like, it takes some work to kind of get things organized in a way that you can do it, and maybe with delegating in a certain way, but like, it's going to be okay. Like your business is going to survive, and you got to take the necessary steps you do to do it. But it's been so good for my business.
I bet. I've seen a small bit of that just in pulling back how much I'm working. Not staying up till 2 a.m. every day kind of thing. But by working less, sometimes I'm accomplishing more, just a clearer mindset. And I could imagine having a month off. I'd probably be jotting down all these ideas that.
The amount of ideas that I get, it's just crazy. And there's I think a verse in Ecclesiastes that, what's his name? Stephen Covey kind of borrowed, which is basically this idea of sharpening the saw. And the verse, I forgot how it goes, but more or less it's like, spend some time sharpening the saw and not just, swinging the axe all day long. And that's what so many of us do these days, because there's always stuff to do, and there's always more stuff than we can actually get done. And this idea of focusing your time on sharpening the axe, and that's what rest is. That's what it does for us, And so there's just so much value there.
Can you let everybody know where they can find you online?
Sure. Yeah. Seedtime.com. So SEDTIME.com, at Seedtime, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. And we're doing a lot on YouTube right now, so you can find us over there as well.
Great. Thanks for being on the show.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Take care.
Thanks as always for listening to the show. And thanks to Bob for helping us sift through the Bible for money advice. You can find the show notes for this episode at MapleMoney.com/Bob Lotich. That's BOBLOTICH. For this week's call to action, I want you to consider your own finances. Are you donating to a cause that matters to you? It could be your church, or maybe towards cancer research, or even your local SPCA. For most people, the federal tax credit is 29% on donations over $200 for the year. If you're donating less, consider carrying that into future years to better take advantage of the credit.